the motion, Lascon Corla. Lascon Corla, we Irish are a nation of radio listeners. More than 3.17 million of us tune into radio every weekday, and principally outside of the Greater Dublin area, independent radio accounts for the majority of listenership. While these stations provide entertainment, advertising and music, they are also a vital source of region-specific information for local communities. The area and the radio station that I know best is Clare FM, and like effectively every other independent local radio, it captures the life and soul of the area that it broadcasts to, from sport to news and current affairs, to carrying information, special information about weather events, right through to the deaths, which form a really important part of the information that citizens of that particular jurisdiction require on a daily basis. And it's clear that the proof of the pudding is in the eating, because people listen consistently and they do expect that service to be provided. Now, unfortunately, as a result of changes within the wider media landscape, local radio stations now find themselves operating under increasing financial strain. Revenues have declined very, very significantly over the past 10 years, putting pressure on the independent stations to cut costs to remain viable and remain afloat. Much of the transfer of revenues away from advertising from the broadcast sector towards the digital platforms has created this significant gulf in funding, and is putting the capacity of these stations to provide the service as set out in their licence agreement, whereby there's a necessity to provide 20% of the content from a news and current affairs perspective. And that's really now being put under particular strain, and it is a real challenge for these stations to retain the depth and breadth of journalistic effort in place to provide that service. And we've seen examples of this, or where similar situations have emerged with our nearest neighbour across the water, where radio stations are unable to continue to provide that service, and you're getting an amalgamation of smaller stations, which ultimately will fail to provide the location-specific information that really is a hallmark of what local radio is all about. So, as I said, in the context of reduced revenues, local and independent stations are particularly impacted. If this pressure continues, the plurality of sources of news could decline, denying communities access to that vital source of information on issues which are really important in those respective areas. We believe on this side of the House that the loss of high-quality, independently sourced news from the independent radio sector would represent a loss to the democratic dialogue at both national and regional level across communities throughout the country. To that end, we have proposed the establishment of a public service broadcast fund for the independent radio sector, and we believe that it is vital to ensure the future viability of the industry. Funding additional supports for local radio will not require the introduction of further measures to raise funds. It will only require the collection of fees that are already owed. As we well know, television licence fee evasion in Ireland is amongst the highest in Europe, and millions of euros are being lost each year by both RTE and the independent sector. We believe, based on a detailed body of work that was done by the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Communications, that with an enhanced level of detection and collection, somewhere between 35 and 50 million euros could be accrued to the state and provide the resources to fund adequately the independent radio sector in its effort to fund news and current affairs, and also address the very significant shortfalls that RTE is encountering. As I said, the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Communications and Environment have already examined the future funding of public service media in detail, and the committee recommended that the Minister establish a scheme to assist radio stations in the provision of such news and current affairs programmes. It also recommended that the Revenue Commissioners should be tasked with the collection of the licence fee, and we do know how successful that was as a previous example, when the collection of the non-principal private residence taxation was moved from local authority to the Revenue Commissioner. The level of evasion there was reduced very significantly in a very short period of time. The additional funds raised could have, we believe, a dual purpose. They could be used to meet the ongoing funding issues at RTE, which the BAI has identified as being very significant and requiring urgent attention, and providing, as I said, a much-needed funding stream for the smaller independent producers. And don't forget that the licence fee already does provide significant funding through the Sound and Vision Fund to the independent production sector, and that's one which we must harness and nurture as part of this. As with most European nations, the Irish broadcast market is already subject to public intervention in the form of funding and oversight, and what we're proposing is already the case in a number of European jurisdictions where they value very much their independent radio sector, recognising the importance it plays in the democratic process. Professionally produced journalism is an essential condition for the survival of modern democracies. The increase in fake news across the globe, particularly in the social media area, has increased the imperative to ensure the widespread availability of impartial, transparent news and current affairs coverage to the individuals of the state. In order to continue to provide unbiased, trustworthy, fact-based news and current affairs coverage relevant for Irish society at the expected standard, adequate public resources must be invested in producing it, and I don't think we should be in any way reticent about supporting that. Thanks to the quality of Irish media, Irish consumers are more trusting of most news than the average EU. But at some 57% of Irish consumers are deeply concerned about the potential for fake news. So in order to address this disinformation, Irish consumers believe that it is the responsibility of news media outlets and governments to take action, and some 63% believe that the government should do more to address this disinformation. Now, to address the specifics of the proposal, Fianna Fáil is proposing that we invest 25% of the funds raised through the increased collection of television licence fee to provide independent radio stations with additional funding to develop and maintain high-quality news and current affairs programmes. And we are also keenly aware that this funding should be responsible and provide as many stations as possible with support. And to this end, Fianna Fáil propose a number of limitations. In the first instance, from a political perspective, we don't believe that the body politic should have any role in the administration of the funds or detailing how and where the funds are distributed. We believe that that should go to the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland to do so in an independent and transparent way. We would also believe, though, that there is a necessity to limit the funding provided to each organisation by ensuring that stations do not receive more than 50% of the cost of production and broadcasting of the quality content. And we believe that in excess of 20% of their operational budget in a given year, or in excess of 250,000 in a given year. So to ensure that there is the greatest spread, if you want, of the available funds, ensuring that all those stations that provide quality news and current affairs to their respective licensing areas are provided with the appropriate assistance. So the additional funds raised could also be used to address, as I said, other funding shortfalls, because we are also conscious that the national broadcaster, together with the independent sector, provide comprehensive news and current affairs information, and assisting one can't be at a cost to the other. And I'm taken by the level of intervention and the level of discussions that have taken place between RTE and the independent broadcasting sector. And I think it's fair to say that there is a level of agreement between both sides to ensure that the future of the licence fee is shared in a manner that allows both sectors to survive. And it is noted that RTE does have a funding requirement of some 30 million as identified by the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland. In conclusion, Lascian Corla, I want to recognise that in the visitors' gallery today there are representatives of most of the independent radio stations throughout the country as part of the Independent Broadcasters of Ireland delegation. I want to thank them for being here, thank them for showing their interest in the work that we're doing on all sides of this House, and I want to wish them well in their efforts to continue to provide trustworthy news and current affairs in an independent way and in a transparent way to the benefit of Irish citizens and to the preservation and protection of the democratic institutions of this state. Thank you.